have a program called KidsSkills, which I just can't wait to talk about because it just seems like a really practical way to help kids who are having problems, whether they're emotional, behavioral.
The first idea, and maybe the most important idea in the whole KidsSkills approach, is that we realize that if you want to collaborate with the children and their parents, then you better stop talking about problems. Mm. So we realized that if you don't talk with the parents and the children about problems, but you only talk about skills that children might need to learn or might benefit from learning, things they need to improve, things they need to practice, this somehow makes it easier to work with people. Parents tend to have a problem when somebody tells your child has a problem. And in my lectures, I often teach this. I say, nobody likes to hear that they have a problem. And if you don't believe me, go home tonight to your husband or to your wife or to your partner and tell them that you've been on a very interesting workshop or training day, and now you know what's their problem. How many of them will say, oh, thank you, darling, for helping me to realize what is my problem? No, they will say, yeah, I know what's your problem. So people don't like to talk about problems, but they like to talk about skills. So we made a shift in the way we speak. And we realized that when we talk with children about skills to learn, they actually listen and they become partners and they want to learn skills. They become motivated to work with us. And children have a lot of lovely ideas. If children want to change their behavior, if they want to overcome a fear, if they want to change the way they behave, if they want to learn to manage their aggression or their anger, they will succeed if they want to. And if we guide them in the right way, and if we get the parents to collaborate with them. So that's the basic idea, that you simply stop talking about problems. And this means that you have to start to think that behind every problem, there is a skill that you can learn. And this is actually not only true for children, it's true for every person in the world.
Yeah. I love this idea of the support team, because it feels like not only do you have allies, right, who are like helping in some way, maybe they have little jobs to help you stay on track, but it's also a kind of accountability, isn't it?
That's exactly how I think.
It strikes me from the way you're speaking with the solution-oriented therapy, you're not really going to spend too much time trying to figure out why and the roots and the cause. You're kind of looking at more of what's going on and how can we create this other solution or behavior. Is that right, that you're not kind of looking too deep into the whys?
It is true, but it's like a little bit reverse. The order is reverse. So when you help the client overcome the so-called symptom, the presenting problem,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because we say presenting problem in psychology, meaning that there could be other problems behind, and it kind of appears. So the client presents this problem. Now in solution-focused work, you always take the presenting problem at face value. So you don't ask what's behind this, what other problem is behind this presenting problem. The presenting problem is the problem that we work with. We ask people, what is the thing you want to change? What is the thing that bothers you right now? And we create a project around that. But we try to make that project so interesting, so exciting, so successful, so self-esteem building, so much improving social relationships, because everybody's helping you and there's maybe even a celebration in the end, so that the experience becomes like a, how would you say, healing experience, or an experience where you feel you belong, or you feel that you are not so lonely anymore. That this experience then allows people to tell whatever other problems they have. So they may say, by the way, you have helped us with our child's sleeping problem. Would you also help us with my husband's drinking problem? the sequence is different. You take the problem that people bring very serious and you help them with that one, rather than, let's not talk about this presenting. Let's look into we will find other problems. And sometimes then people back off and then you get nowhere. Whereas in this approach, you give people a good experience of solving maybe a trivial problem to begin with, but the experience can be good, and people will open up and they will tell you all the other problems.
And I think our conscious and our subconscious are talking to each other, even though we are not always aware. And as you were just speaking, I was thinking, well, this superficial fix might be touching someone at a deeper level, so that at that more energetic causal problem, right, the causal area, whatever the original hurt is, perhaps that original hurt feels heard somehow by virtue of this more superficial work, because there's relational, there's a bidirectionality there, I think.
Yeah. When we started KidsSkills, it was in a group of 8 children, and then each child had a skill to learn. So the staff of the kindergarten started to say things like that when they talked with the parents. So it was not uncommon for the parents to say, I have been thinking, maybe I need to learn a skill too. And then we don't have to go to the parents and say, you know what, your child needs to learn a skill, but why don't you pick the mirror and look at yourself in the mirror and see how many skills you need to learn. We don't have to criticize the parents, and we don't have to, tell them in their face that they need to change in order for their children to be able to change. If we work with the children in a way where we respect the parents and we recruit them as helpers, and we discuss how they can participate in supporting the child who's learning a skill, people are not stupid. They really quickly come up with the idea. Well,
they start thinking for themselves, huh?
Yeah. I might need to learn a skill too, or a skill or two. Or two. And my husband also needs to learn a skill. So what has happened in recent times is that we've kind of come back full circle and realized that these kinds of approaches where people are learning skills, they work better if they are done collectively. Collectively means that not only a child is learning a skill. So, for example, in a classroom, the teacher may say, I have a skill to learn too. The parents may actually be advised that if you pick a skill to learn too, you can decide for yourselves what it is, or maybe the mother can suggest something to the father, or the father can suggest something to the mother. Anyways, if the parents are also learning some skill, then you have a more democratic environment where the children don't feel like they are being pushed to learn some skill, but we are all in it together. And so now we have been developing various approaches to work with the whole classroom. You work with the whole class. You don't pick the children who have problems and then tell they need to learn a skill and have supporters to support them. You could do that, but it feels much more natural when all children have some skills to learn. People don't need medication, they need help. Yeah. And then we can work together, but we cannot help them by just telling them that they have to change. We have to create a project, they have to participate in creating the project. We have to have supporters and helpers, and sometimes it's not enough to have only human helpers, and children are quite good. Like one boy said, I want my dog to be my helper. So the therapist or counselor says, but you cannot bring your dog to the school. How can your dog help you when you get into fights, during the recess? So he said, I have to think about it. Next day he goes to school. He's wearing the collar of the dog. Came up with this idea. He cannot bring the dog. He can bring the collar of the dog.
This is genius. And this is where I think the real promise of this system is children have such rich imaginations.
Yeah. And nobody ever
can go in directions we would never even imagine.
they are better at problem solving than we are. So we think we are the experts and we know all the cognitive, we have to do this training and that training. We don't have to do so much training. We just need to have good questions, and then the children will start to participate.